Hello Fringers, I've got a new breakaway crochet project to show you, and in this tutorial I will be going over everything you need to know to crochet my outside the lines shawl. And I've got something else new for you. I'm now giving you the choice between a free text-only version of the instructions and, after many requests, a paid version which includes all the instructions in charted format. Please see the description for links to both versions. But make sure you stay tuned here, because this project involves a lot of new methods and techniques that are unique to my breakaway crochet method, and I want to make sure to show you the things that might be hard to understand by reading the patterns alone. For this shawl, I wanted to add a real splash of color, so I've gone out on a limb and used a color-changing yarn. And look what happened. Since I work the motifs continuously, and at the same time the color changes in the yarn happen randomly, it was impossible to keep a particular color within the outlines of any given motif. So it looks like I kind of colored outside the lines, hence the name of the shawl. If all the random color seems a bit over the top for you, then you can, of course, also get a very attractive shawl by substituting a single color yarn of your choice. This shawl is made up of two different motifs, a main motif and a wheel motif. As is typical with breakaway projects, we will be working these motifs back and forth in rows. Each row will focus on one or the other motif at a time. So, on some rows, you will be working only on wheels, and on other rows, you will be working mostly the main motifs. And of course, I will be showing you how to crochet all the motifs in this entire project continuously and joined as you go. So, let's get started with the first row. And just note, for this tutorial I will be demonstrating everything by working a small swatch using a single color yarn that is different from the yarn the pattern calls for. So let's get started on the first foundation row, and of course we will be starting working wheels along this bottom edge. And all wheels start with one of my breakaway crochet stitches called a floating double crochet. And just a review, to make a floating double crochet, start with a yarn over. And since this is the very first double crochet or floating double crochet of the whole project, you want to hang on to these loops to keep them from spinning around the hook. You want to keep them nice and stable. So do that yarn over, hold on to it, and now let's make the floating ring. To make the floating ring, do another yarn over, pinch the yarn close to the hook, do another yarn over, and draw that yarn in with what you're already pinching. So that's 2 pinched loops near the hook. Finish the floating ring with another yarn over and pull through the 2 pinched loops. So the floating ring, we do that instead of a magic circle or a chain 4 slip stitch that serves as the center of the motif. Instead, we're going to be working all the stitches into those 2 loops there, the floating ring. Okay, so let's finish this floating double crochet by working the double crochet part, and we've already got the 3 loops on the hook that we need to finish that off. So just do your yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and there's our floating double crochet done. Continue the very first wheel with 2 more double crochets worked into the floating ring. There we go. And that is as far as we're going on this first wheel. We've reached the breakaway point. So now we're going to move on to the next wheel. So again, the next wheel starts with a floating double crochet. So let's yarn over, then make a floating ring by doing yarn over, pinch, yarn over, pinch, yarn over, pull through 2. There's the floating ring. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So there's the beginning of the second wheel, and this time we need 8 more double crochets into that floating ring. Which gives us the equivalent of 9 double crochets in that second wheel. So repeat this second wheel. You need 3 more of these. Another floating double crochet, 8 double crochets into the floating ring, and so on until you have 4 of these wheels that have 9 stitches each. There we go. As you work so far, there's the wheel with only 3 stitches, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Each of those have 9 stitches. We've got 1 more wheel to do in this section, and it is just a floating double crochet with only 2 double crochets in, just like the very first one we started with. So I'm just going to pause here and make sure those of you that prefer charts can understand how I've laid all this out. So what we've just done here is this first section in blue. I've done all these partial wheels here. All right, that section in blue I've got in written text above here, so anything in blue here corresponds to that section there. Whenever you start a new row, I've got a start sign here and a number 1, and the little arrows show you which direction we're working. As far as the symbol goes, you'll notice that the floating stitches, I've made those a little bit bolder. So here is the floating double crochet that starts off that very first wheel, and those 2 double crochets we worked, and then we skip down to this wheel, worked that floating double crochet and the 8 double crochets and so on, and ended with that one with the floating double crochet and 2 double crochets. Now for the next section here in gold, you notice that it repeats. So we will be doing this just for this sample. I'm only going to repeat this twice, but for the first row of the actual shawl, you will be repeating this section 9 times to make up the length or the width of the shawl. Okay, if you want to make the shawl wider, you can, but I would strongly recommend you buy an extra ball of yarn than what I've specified in the pattern. Okay, so this gold section here, I'm going to work it now. It's basically the same as this one, but with one little change. And that one little change has to do with joining the 3rd stitch of this wheel into one that goes ahead of time, or one that we've done before. So let's go over that now. So with the next little wheel of that next section, again, start with a floating double crochet. work 2 more double crochets into the floating ring, and this brings us to a joining point for this little wheel. What we need to do now is join this stitch to this wheel here. In the written instructions, I say to go back 9 stitches behind the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's how you find what stitch to slip stitch into. And with my kind of breakaway slip stitch, just dip the hook down, go into that stitch, bring everything to the left, and finish that slip stitch. And that's made that join there. Now this wheel needs another 6 stitches. So let's go ahead and put 6 more double crochets into that floating ring. Work 3 more partial wheels, just like we did before with the floating ring, and 8 double crochets. There we are. Those are the 3 next wheels, and then finish that section with a floating double crochet and 2 double crochets into that wheel. Okay, so that sets up the repeat for this middle section. Start your next wheel here, but again remember that it joins in. This time it will join into this wheel here, and then just the 3 wheels that are not joined to anything. Each of those have 9 stitches, and end with the wheel that only has the floating double crochet and 2 double crochets in the floating ring. So again, I'm only going to work this section one more time, but when you are working your shawl, you will need to do that a total of 9 times. So that's our sample so far. I've repeated that middle section twice. There's the first section. Alright, so in the actual shawl, if you want to make sure you've got the right number of wheels, count each one, no matter what it looks like. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Count all your wheels up, and you should have 51 wheels started at this point. And let's go on to the final section, the magenta section. Basically the same thing as the second section. It just ends with the wheel that has 9 stitches in. So I'll go ahead and work these 5 more wheels, remembering to join that 3rd stitch of this wheel into this one before. And once you've worked your last section, you should have a total of 56 wheels across. Of course mine doesn't, but yours will. And yours will also have 11 kind of little sections all together for each little dip here. There should be 11. Now for the return row is considerably easier. All you really have to do is finish off each wheel, making sure that each wheel has 15 double crochets. Alright, so we'll just get started on that. Since that has 9, I'll put 6 more double crochets in. And of course, to finish off or close this wheel, instead of slip stitching into the next stitch, what we do here is slip stitch between the current one I'm working on now and the next one. What I do is dipping the hook underneath and working a slip stitch and continue to the next wheel. So really that's all you do for this row. Just see how many you need to make up 15. It'll either be, you'll need 6 more stitches on most of these wheels, and of course when you get to this one you'll need to put 12, And again, you're slip stitching between each wheel to close it off. And for those of you using the chart version, notice that this return row starts here where I've just started before, working the stitches with the slip stitch in between each wheel, going along. Again, repeating the gold section 9 times in this case for the first row, and then finishing up. And on that last wheel, we only need 3 double crochets. That's the breakaway point to go up to the next row. Also notice that in my charts, any stitch that is kind of a light gray color, those are stitches we've already worked, so that helps you orient where you are and where to put stitches in for this next row. Alright, so I'll go ahead and finish all that up and meet you right here at the end before the next row. And back to real life, and I've gone ahead and here I am at the end, and I said I would work to. I've only done just 3 more stitches in this wheel because all these wheels that are going to be on the left hand edge are going to only be partially worked until the very end, but all the other wheels should be finished. Alright, and everything should look like this, especially in these, where these 3 meet. You would have had to slip down a slip stitch between those 2 spots there. Alright, so moving on to the next row. And for the next row, we're swapping over, and now we're going to be working the main motif, which they slot in to the little curves there. Okay, and since this motif is bigger, there's some special instructions. First of all, it is worked over 1, 2, 3 rounds. Okay, so to be able to get from the outside of the motif all the way into the center so that we can work this first round, there's some special techniques to do. So I'll go over that now, and then I'll show you on the chart what that looks like. Okay, so again, we're going to slot this first main motif within this little section here. And because we're working continuously, we need to do something special to get to the middle here without breaking the yarn. And the way we do that is to begin with a chain 3. And in the instructions, this is the point where I have kind of abbreviated all these instructions into the 3 initials WFR, that stands for work first rounds. So really, whenever you see that abbreviation, work first rounds, here's what you do. After the chain 3, put a stitch marker into the working loop on the hook, because we're going to drop that off in a minute, and we don't want that to unravel. Alright, so now here's how we get to the middle of that main motif. Start with 3 yarn overs, and now make a floating ring. So do another yarn over pinch, yarn over pinch, yarn over pull through 2. There's a floating ring. And since the first stitches of that first round are single crochets, let's use just the next 2 loops on the hook to finish off a single crochet. So in essence, we've just made a single crochet, but we've got extra loops on the hook that we don't need right now. We're going to save those for later rounds, okay, for the first stitch of later rounds. So let's just drop all that off and get that working loop back on the hook. And we're kind of back to normal now in a way. Alright, and continue round 1. We need 11 more single crochets into the floating ring to make 12 altogether. And this time we close off this little ring, or this round, with a slip stitch into the next single crochet. So that's round 1 done of the work first rounds. Now round 2 starts with what I call a load DC increase. So to do that, just take the hook out and come back to this, what I call the slack yarn, which is between the working loop and the marked loop. Come from the front to the back and underneath. Just come around and make a yarn over. Do that again for a second yarn over, and then put the working loop back on the hook. There we go. There's got 3 yarns over, or 3 loops on the hook. Let's finish a double crochet. A yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. See, we've got a bit more yarn left over for the next round. That's okay. Alright, and as I said, this is a load double crochet increase. We've done the first double crochet of the increase. Let's do the next double crochet in the same stitch. Oops. And it's really just a double crochet increase, or 2 double crochets worked into the same stitch. And just continue the rest of the row with double crochet increases in every stitch. And that should have made 24 double crochets in total around this round. And again, finish this round with a slip stitch into the next stitch. Okay, so I might pause here and swap over to the chart just to make sure you understand what was going on there. So just to review, here was the start where we've just started this row. I've done those 3 chains, and now I've detoured. See that big arrow that goes around here? I've detoured and worked these 2 rounds here. That's just what I've just done, and coming back out to this next stitch here, which I've not done yet. So when you see where it's going to be going into this chart in the middle, that's where you detour down here to round 1, and that is explained, of course, in the written text. It says chain 3, detour to the work first rounds. So come down here, work this, just like I've just done. There is our single crochet and the 12 single crochets, the load DC. That's that little symbol there, and then the 12 DC increases, slip stitch. All right. So we've detoured, and now we've come back to here, and now we come back up here. It's time now to do round 3, and here's another, that special stitch that we're going to start round 3 with. Now essentially we need to do a DC3 together, and we need to incorporate that slack yarn into that stitch. So let's do that now. Okay, so to do that, restore DC3 together, as I call it. First of all, take the hook out of the working loop. Let's come over here. Let's go ahead and take the stitch marker out. You can leave it in if you want, but I think it gets in the way, so I'll take it off now. And put the hook back in there. And now we just need 1 yarn over with the slack yarn. So just come around like that. and then put the hook back into the working loop. So then we have 3 loops on the hook ready to do the first, at least partial DC of the DC3 together. Okay, so like I said, because this is a DC3 together, just yarn over, pull through 2 one time, yarn over, let's pick up another partially worked DC in the next stitch, and one more time, drop a loop, and pull through 2, and pull through all 4 loops, and there is our load DC3 together. Alright, so let's continue now. This is kind of an interesting kind of sequence. Once we've done the DC3 together, chain 3, and now we're going to start hooking into the first row. So what we need to do, we've already hooked into this first wheel. We need to hook into this one now. And we do that into the 3rd stitch of this wheel. So count back 1, 2, 3. And slip stitch into that stitch. Continue with chain 3. And now we're doing DC3 together again, except I'm calling it a same DC3 together, because the first of the 3 double crochets starts in the same stitch where we left off on the last one. Okay, so just go into that same stitch to work an unfinished double crochet, an unfinished double crochet in the next stitch, and the 3rd one in the next stitch. There we go. So you're always starting each of these 3 stitches in the same stitch as the last DC. Right, so continue with chain 3. That's pretty much our sequence. Find the next wheel, count back 3, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch, chain 3, and come back and do another same DC3 together. Alright, so we're going to keep going until we've hooked in to the next 3 wheels. So there we are. I've finished that sequence of chain 3, slip stitch, chain 3, SDC3 together, so on, and I've gone into that last wheel at this peak here, DC3 together, chain 3, and now we're going to make kind of a little transition between this motif and the one that's going to slot in here. And what we need to do is work another partial wheel that sits between the 2. So that's all very easy. Again, start with the floating double crochet. Two double crochets. And that puts us at a joining point. We need to join where we are into the same wheel, I'm calling it. So we slip stitched into there. We need to slip stitch into this one again. And again, count back 1, 2, 3. Slip stitch. 3 more double crochets into this same wheel. There we go. Remember, important to chain 3 here and ready for the next main motif. So I'll go ahead and put a stitch marker in. Alright, so that's how the first section should work. If you're checking your work, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the SDC3 togethers. Alright, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wheels around that motif. Okay, now going on to this next one, and it's basically the same thing. I'll just show that to you on the chart. Okay, so here's where we're starting in the gold section again, doing that chain 3, detouring down to the work first rounds to work these 2 rounds that are appearing in gray here, working that load DC3 together and hooking in as we go along. All right, and that last wheel, and again we're repeating this in the gold. We do that 9 times, and pretty straightforward. The last one is again the same thing, but we're ending with that SDC3 together, just there because we've run out of wheels to hook into. So after the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th DC3 together, that's where you stop before we go on to the next row. And here's how things look in real life up to that point. And now that we've gotten here to the end of the row, it's time to come back around and finish these main motifs. And if we just go back to the chart, it might be easier to explain what's going on. And it is pretty simple. Just starting here and working from right to left. We just continue with chain 6s and the same DC3 together stitches going around each motif. When you get to this last same DC3 together, you've got the first DC goes into the previous stitch, and that the third one goes into the same stitch as that very first one at the beginning of the round. That's just something a little bit different there on the last one. And chain 3, slip stitch in between or around that chain 3, and continue around, finishing off that wheel with another 9 double crochets and continuing on. Again, repeating this gold section. Another 9 DC here with a slip stitch around the chain 3 and finishing off. This time, even though this main motif is on the left hand edge, it actually gets finished off because it's only the wheels that end up being partially worked on the edge. So all of the main motifs should by now, when you get to the very end here, they should all be finished. Another way to check your work, on the last section here, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chains that are not connected to any wheels in any way. And the middle section, 1, 2, 3, 4. He should have 4 chain 6 spaces there. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chain 6 spaces here at the end. All right, so that's make sure that happens before you go on, otherwise you might be off kilter. Oh, and another thing, when you get to that last wheel, you've got 3 more double crochets, just taking another bite out of that one there at the end. So this last wheel at the end should have 9 double crochets. And here we are back to real life, ready for the next row. So for the next row, we're coming back and working with wheels. And basically, we're just going to be outlining the main motifs with more wheels. That wheel's a little bit bigger, or too big for this sample, but you'll see what I mean. Okay, so again, we're working from left to right. And this is all pretty easy. It's very much like the very first row we did. Let me bring that chart back up. It's going to look a lot like this one, except we're going to be kind of starting in a different place, and these sort of peaks are going to be happening in a different place. So let's have a look at that. Start off this next row with the first wheel, again floating double crochet, 2 double crochets. So essentially after that third double crochet, this is probably the last sort of bit of terminology I need to go over with you. We need to hook up this stitch here into what I'm calling the next chain 6 space. Now that one's already got a join there. This one's free and empty, so you know that's the next one to go into. So just slip stitch into there, 3 double crochets, do 1 more of those, so that's 2 that we've done here, each with 6 double crochets in, and hooked up halfway between into the chain 6 space. Start another one in the same way, a double crochet and 2 double crochets into the floating ring, slip stitch, and this time on this one we need 6 more double crochets. Okay, so that puts us at the point we've got 2 more loops here with 9 double crochets into that wheel there, and this is where we veer up and do another wheel that only has the 3 stitches in. So floating double crochet and 2 double crochets, and we break away to the next wheel that then joins into that one before. You should remember how to do that from the first row. That's a floating double crochet, 2 double crochets, count back 9 stitches behind the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and slip stitch into that 9th stitch. Okay. This time just work 3 more double crochets and we come to another joining point. Okay, so after the 6th stitch there, we join again into the next chain 6 space. Work 3 more double crochets. Okay, so that's probably the trickiest bit here. You've got a different joining pattern to happen on this row. Now from here we've got another wheel that joins in to that space, and this one as well. So let's do that one. Floating double crochet, 2 double crochets, find the next chain 6 space, slip stitch, 3 double crochets, and slip stitch into the 3rd stitch of the next wheel. So 1, 2, 3, and then 3 double crochets. Okay, so I think you can see what's starting to happen here. We're making another another dip here that's kind of offset from the first one. So the first dip was here, the next one is going to happen in there. Okay, and so from here we just continue on with more wheels around each main motif, just pretty much like I've done here. So just in case, I think I'll just go around the second one here, because that's the section that you will repeat. Just want to make sure you understand what's going on there, because again, this is fairly different from anything we've done before. So we're breaking away to a new wheel here, floating double crochet, 2 double crochets, find the 3rd stitch of the same wheel, 3 double crochets, slip stitch into the next chain 6 space, and then 3 double crochets. The next wheel will start and join in just to the next space. So start with a floating double crochet and 2 double crochets. Slip stitch into the space, and 6 double crochets here. Okay, because now it's time to go up and do that extra little bit like we've done here. So break away to your next wheel that only has the floating double crochet and 2 double crochets. Break away to the next wheel, floating double crochet and 2 double crochets in the floating ring. Remember, we've got to, after you do that one with only the 3 stitches, we've got to join up to what we've done before. Remember, count back 9 and go into that stitch there. Three more double crochets, slip stitch into the next space, 3 more double crochets. I'll just pause there. There's still 1 more wheel to go in that section. Okay, that's your work so far. And let's do that last wheel in this section, the floating double crochet. Two double crochets, slip stitch in the next chain 6 space, 3 double crochets, and slip stitch into that 3rd stitch of the next wheel. And finish off with 3 more double crochets. Okay, so that's that. So the second section is going to be over those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wheels. All right, and just noting that in this section you've got 9 stitches in every wheel except for that one that has 3, and every wheel should be joined up. Well, you've got 2 slip stitches, but they're joined up by the breakaway stitches as well. All right, so actually I don't know if there's a pattern there. Just try to memorize what that looks like. All right, and that's what you repeat for the rest of those middle sections. And I've just gone ahead and worked the last section, starting there. So everything was the same except for these last two here. They each only have 6 double crochets, and again you're slip stitching into that third stitch of that double crochet, or that third stitch of that wheel there. Okay, so now it's time to come back the other way. We're finishing off all these wheels, and it's a lot like again when we did in the beginning. If you pretty much suss out how many stitches you already have in each wheel, you'll know how many to put on to make up for 15. So every wheel all along will have 15 double crochets, and just remember to slip stitch in between each of the stitches or the wheels to close them off. Alright, now you're going to work your way all the way back to this last 3-stitch wheel here. So this is going to be the end of the row, and you just need 3 more double crochets here before we break away to the next row. So don't be tempted to go all the way back down here. These are going to be left unfinished until the end, but just do those 3 stitches there to finish off the row. Okay, so there we are at the end of that row, and from now on it's pretty much what we've already done. You will just have one less repeat on this. There'll be a second row and then a third row, and of course now the next step is to put in the next row of main motifs. And again, where you had 4 here, you will only have 3 here, or in your real shawl you had 11 across, so you'll only have 10 on the second row. Alright, so I won't bore you by going through all that again. Just repeat from where you add these in on a foundation row and a return row, and then these last 2 foundation rows and return rows of the wheels. Okay. So things are again the same pretty much until you get past the third row of the main motif. So I'll just skip up to that point. Okay, fast forward up to where I was just talking about. I've done 3 rows of main motifs, and I've done the last row of the wheels here, and you notice it is slightly different. Instead of doing those extra bits that have just the 3 stitches, you're basically just going straight around, and all of these wheels pretty much are going to have the 6 stitches, but these 2 wheels that come on the intersection will be the same. Okay, so you're working all the way around, slip stitching into the last wheel here at the end of that row, and then it's just a matter of coming back with a return row, and this time it's going to go all the way over this top edge, again making sure all the wheels have 15 double crochets, but then you're just going to keep carrying on and finishing up any unfinished wheels on that left hand edge. And when you get to the very last wheel, you know it's the last wheel because it's got the original yarn tail hanging off. Just 6 more double crochets. Slip stitch into the next stitch, and you're ready to finish things off. So thanks for watching. If I went a little bit too quickly on any section, you can either ask me a quick question in the comments, or please consider joining my Facebook group. The description, or the link for that, is in the description. That's where I can give a more thorough explanation of something that you might not be understanding. But I hope you enjoy this project, especially with all the different colors that I don't normally do. Again, thanks for watching and hope to see you again soon.